President Cyril Ramaphosa set to give testimony at the state capture inquiry. Now, official opposition leader John Steenhuisen says he will be there to witness it in person. Just hours after Ramaphosa told South Africans to vote corrupt leaders out, he will face questions about ways through which he was allegedly complicit in wide-scale corruption while he was ANC Deputy President. And that's, of course, as the deadline approaches for the party's Secretary General, Ace Magashule, to step aside. So what are the political implications for the ANC today at the state capture inquiry? To help us unpack the story and all of the developments around it, we're joined in studio by political analyst Ongama Mtimka. He is lecturer of political studies at the Nelson Mandela University. It's great to have you here in studio with us. We usually talk on the phone.
Good morning. Thank you, Michelle.
Ongama, I mean, you know, we were discussing off air before we came to the segment. Where do we begin today to understand this moment that we find ourselves in? In many ways, we've been waiting for this, haven't we? For President Cyril Ramaphosa, in the face of many speeches, rousing speeches he's given about accountability and unity and et cetera within the ANC, including yesterday's Freedom Day speech. We wanted him to give his version of what unfolded during the years he's described as wasted years under Zuma.
Absolutely, Michelle. So this is an important moment for South Africa, in the sense that the symbolism and the imagery of it confirms yet again the preeminence of the rule of law and the preeminence of constitutionalism over political power. That's an important message. Just in itself, having the sitting president of the country, president of the ruling party, in a quasi-judicial process and answering questions there. That's an important moment in itself. And as I say, it underscores the preeminence of the rule of law. So the president has been cued by his own former Secretary General and now his chairperson in terms of where he starts his presentation at the State Capture Commission of Inquiry. I think while wrapping up his presentation around the banks saga, Gwede did say to the chairperson of the commission that he hopes the president is able to paint a broader, holistic picture about the dynamics of decision-making and political leadership within the ANC in ways that can help us understand how the party could be so complicit in state capture. And also, I think that Mamdashe again said that they had a problem with state capture as a party, and they started dealing with it politically more towards the latter end of Jacob Zuma's first 5 years in the ANC presidency and in the second term, obviously. And he says some of the key issues for him or for them as a party was, one, when they saw decisions being made which were contrary to the policy standpoints of the ANC. And secondly, the recalls which were unfortunate of Nhlanhla Nene calling back Pravin Gordhan from London and also firing him. So he's kind of painted the scope for where the president should begin. So
you talk about, you know, giving us an understanding of how the ANC could be so complicit in corruption, in wide-scale corruption in our country. That's going to be an interesting discussion because the ANC itself, at least that's what the optics tell us, fails to clamp down corruption in its own ranks, never mind South Africa. In fact, that's where the crux of the issue is, and that's where Gwede Mantashe sort of passed on the baton to the president, because in him answering the question about how they were dealing with state capture politically within the party, he says that, well, if it was dependent on some of us, we would have passed the resolution to appoint the commission much earlier. In fact, he makes a reference to a conference resolution to that effect, that there was an agreement to have the State Capture Commission of Inquiry politically within the party. And then he advances this point, Michelle, which suggests that perhaps we must understand a lot more about what's happening in the party. The internal contestation
which constitutes the structure within which agents within the party are dealing with in order to grapple with some of the things which may be either corrective actions or, in fact, further degeneration. So he argues, for example, that ask the president when he's here about how difficult and how divided we were when we faced the issue of whether Jacob Zuma should step down. And he highlights that as something that shows that the party was not, in fact, what we see in, as external stakeholders, as an organization which was simplistically creating a permissive environment for state capture to thrive, but rather one where internally there was contestation, and he suggests that at the time it was being defeated until a particular time when the ANC needed to take action. And then about the parliamentary process, he says, as a matter of principle, the party didn't want the removal of its own president to be driven by forces outside of its own internal decision-making structures, because that would be tantamount to bringing the whole house down. We may disagree with him. I disagree with him because the view is that MPs in Parliament ought to have taken decisions on the basis of what they themselves saw as good responsibility to the country. But what I liked about Gwede Mantashe's testimony, Michelle, was him being true to his convictions, and in doing so, and being able to differ with what we accept to be normal, creates the opportunity for us to assess them on their own convictions as leaders. And I hope that the president doesn't become wishy-washy and want to say what he thinks we want to hear. We want him to be able to state his position on the party's political standpoints, so that we're able to assess whether he is an internal agent that's trapped by an administrative and political apparatus that was not favorable to what he wanted, or in fact he was part of the problem.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you reckon we're going to get that? Because if we go from his speeches, his utterances in public, his comments at the wreath-laying ceremony of the anniversary of Mama Winnie Madikizela Mandela's death. I don't know if you saw that crossing to him there in Fourways Memorial Park, where he talked about, unity being at an all-time high. Those were not his exact words. I think he said unity is turbocharged in the governing party. Do you reckon we're going to get what you say we're hoping for from the ANC president today?
That, Michelle, depends on how whoever is going to lead evidence there and the chairperson are going to interpret their role in this process. And secondly, how firm they are going to be about digging to get the truth. They were not afraid to be assertive with Gwede Mantashe and cross-examining some of what he stated, for example, around the issue of cadre deployment and whether or not that should also translate to judicial appointments. I hope that they have the same stance to the president. We can't waste this moment with sweetheart questions.
Absolutely.
They shouldn't, be overwhelmed by the fact that we have the president there. They must be. I'd rather have them combative.
Yes, absolutely.
And make mistakes being combative than having a sweetheart approach with the president.
They're doing country duty today, aren't they?
Absolutely.
We're all going to be watching, because these are the answers that South Africans want. South Africans without water and sanitation. South Africans who are still waiting for the Liberation Party to be the governing party.
Yes, Michelle, and particularly for understanding President Cyril Ramaphosa's own agency. He's used executive positions and speeches to advance the narrative that...
Of the party.
To advance the narrative that he's an agent of change within the party.
Right.
It's time that that gets cross-examined. And when questions are being asked, for example, about you chose to lie low.
Yes.
Because you had an ambition of becoming the president.
Yes.
Now, from a cost-benefit point of view, did the country derive greater value from you lying low and not rocking the boat at the time, and have people like Hanekom, and I don't know why his first name escapes me now.
Derek
Hanekom and Pravin Gordhan be the ones who opposed President Zuma directly? And why did you take that step of lying low? Indeed, it can be explained that he wanted to ensure that he becomes the next president of the party.
Or he was working within the apparatus of the governing party.
Yes,
perhaps.
But why did he not actually... because remember, South Africans did need to see that there was a process of differing with the regime at the time. So then he must answer whether his own stance was good for the country, or good for him but bad for the country.
Absolutely.
If he acted, could some of the things that happened have been stopped? And later on, when it comes back to the commission, I suppose it's going to answer that question in more detail about how his own potential benefits from what was happening were managed, for example, with the allegations that have been made by Machela Koko and Brian Molefe. Obviously, that's going to come much later, but it is not unrelated to how he may have conducted himself at the time when the country needed him to act the most.
We haven't even talked about the step-aside resolution. You're going to be with us for the most of our show today, for the next couple of hours at least. Talk to us about, very, very quickly, and I apologize to Control for this, very, very quickly about how the step-aside resolution today also feeds into, no doubt, what will be some of the questions put to the President about the inner workings of the ANC.
Sure. And in fact, I suspect that part of the reason why they would have expedited that decision, notwithstanding the delays, would be to be able to tell a good story today. That because of my agency and the agency of my leadership, we are busy instituting change within the party, to the extent that today we have people needing to step aside and we're going to be taking action. I think that's how he's going to capitalize on that process today.
Yeah, but as you say, we hope that the evidence leaders will not tiptoe around having the President there, that they'll put all of those big questions to Cyril Ramaphosa, who is on the stand at the state capture inquiry, I understand, today and tomorrow. Ongama Mtimka is in studio with us throughout the morning to help us understand exactly what this moment means in our country to have a sitting president at the inquiry.